My name is Jean, and at 67 years old, I never thought my only daughter would betray me like this. After 40 years of nursing, saving every penny I could, Amanda walked into my house wearing a $10,000 watch and demanded my entire life savings. She said it was time to even things out between us. I still remember the cold look in her eyes. If you're watching this, let me know where you're from, hit subscribe, and maybe hold on to your wallet because what I did next changed everything. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where everyone knew everyone's business. My parents worked at the local factory, and they taught me the value of a dollar from the moment I could count. Save for a rainy day, my mother would say as she carefully counted out coupons at the kitchen table. My father worked overtime for 25 years to make sure we had food on the table and a roof over our heads. When I turned 18, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. Nursing was my calling, and I put myself through nursing school by working nights at a diner. Every tip I earned went into a small tin box labeled Future. I was determined to build something better than what my parents had. I met David during my first year as a registered nurse. He worked in hospital administration, and we shared the same values about money. On our first date, he suggested we split the bill, and I knew right then he was different from other men. We married within a year, both of us bringing our careful saving habits into our marriage. "We'll never be rich," David used to say, "but we'll be secure." We bought a modest home and paid extra on the mortgage every month. Our weekends were spent doing home improvements ourselves instead of hiring contractors. Every raise or bonus went straight into savings. When I found out I was pregnant with Amanda, we were overjoyed, but also worried about the financial implications. David created spreadsheets to calculate how much we needed to save for her future education. We opened a college fund when she was just 2 weeks old. Amanda was our only child, and perhaps that was part of the problem. We adored her, and while we didn't spoil her with material things, we gave her all our love and attention. She was a bright, beautiful child with David's blue eyes and my stubborn chin. I can still picture her at age 5 counting the coins in her piggy bank, trying to be like her parents. Everything changed when Amanda turned 12. David had been complaining about headaches for months, but we both assumed it was stress from work. By the time he finally saw a doctor, the brain tumor was already too far advanced. Within 6 months, I was a widow with a heartbroken preteen daughter. The life insurance policy saved us financially, but emotionally, we were adrift. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts to keep our savings goals on track. Looking back, perhaps I was too focused on financial security and not enough on the emotional security Amanda needed. But I was terrified of failing her, of not being able to provide the future David and I had planned. As Amanda entered her teenage years, I noticed changes in her attitude toward money. While her friends got part-time jobs, she expected an allowance without chores. When I suggested she work at the mall like other 16-year-olds, she looked at me like I had suggested she live on the streets. "None of my friends have to work," she complained. "Their parents actually support them." Those words stung because I was working 60-hour weeks to support her. Still, I blamed myself. Perhaps if David had lived, things would have been different. Perhaps she was just acting out because of her grief. I gave in more often than I should have, hoping to fill the void her father's death had created. When it came time for college, Amanda refused to consider the state universities where she had been offered scholarships. Instead, she set her heart on an expensive private university out of state. I dipped into my retirement savings to make it happen, telling myself it was what David would have wanted. "I'll pay you back when I graduate, Mom," Amanda promised as she packed her designer luggage for freshman year. But even then, I knew those were empty words. A pattern was already forming that would define our relationship for decades to come. During her college years, Amanda's calls home usually coincided with her need for money. Her roommate was going to Cancun for spring break, and she felt left out. Her laptop broke right before finals. Her car needed repairs. Each time I transferred the funds, telling myself this was temporary, that she would learn responsibility eventually. She graduated with a degree in communications and immediately expected me to help her with the security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment she couldn't afford in the expensive part of the city. When I suggested a more reasonable neighborhood, she accused me of not wanting her to be safe. I was caught in a trap of my own making, and I didn't know how to escape. After college, Amanda landed a job at a marketing firm. Her salary was modest for a beginner, but instead of living within her means, she immediately adopted a lifestyle more suited to an executive. Her apartment was in the trendiest neighborhood. Her clothes were all designer labels, and she leased a car that cost more than my annual property taxes. Every few months, she would call in a financial crisis. Her credit cards were maxed out, her rent had increased, her car needed repairs. Each time I would bail her out, hoping this would be the last time, hoping she would finally learn. When Amanda was 29, she met Tyler at a charity gala she had been invited to by a client. Tyler came from old money and worked as an investment banker. He drove a sports car, wore tailored suits, and exuded the confidence of someone who had never worried about money a day in his life. "Mom, he's perfect," Amanda gushed over the phone. "His family has a summer house in the Hamptons and a winter place in Aspen. Can you believe it?" Not once did she mention his personality, his values, or how he treated her. It was all about the lifestyle he represented. I tried to express my concerns, but Amanda accused me of being jealous of her happiness. Their wedding was an extravaganza that would have made royalty blush. Amanda demanded I contribute my fair share, which somehow amounted to nearly $30,000. When I explained that this would significantly impact my retirement savings, she reminded me that normal parents save for their daughter's wedding day. I cashed out some investments to pay for the flower arrangements and the open bar. The ceremony was beautiful, but I felt like an outsider. Tyler's family was polished and sophisticated, looking at me with barely concealed pity. I was the widow nurse who couldn't afford to be in their social circle without stretching my finances to the breaking point. After the wedding, Amanda and Tyler bought a house in an upscale suburb that cost more than I would earn in 10 lifetimes. Their furniture was custom made, their vacations exotic, and their social media feeds looked like luxury advertisements. Yet somehow they never seemed to have enough. 2 years into their marriage, Amanda gave birth to Lily, my first grandchild. I was overjoyed and immediately fell in love with the tiny bundle with Amanda's blue eyes. A year and a half later, Ethan joined the family. I longed to be a hands-on grandmother, to build the kind of relationship with my grandchildren that I wished I had with Amanda. But visits were always on their terms. I was welcome to babysit on short notice, but rarely invited to birthday parties or special occasions. "It's just family and close friends," Amanda would say, not realizing how much her words hurt. When I did visit, the children were often being looked after by a nanny, while Amanda was at the spa or shopping with friends. After 40 years of nursing, I finally retired at 65. My retirement party was a small affair with my colleagues from the hospital. Amanda was invited, but sent a text at the last minute saying Ethan had a cold and she couldn't make it. Later that week, I saw pictures on her social media of a weekend shopping trip she'd taken to New York with her friends. I settled into a modest but comfortable retirement. My house was paid off, my health was good, and I had what I thought was a secure nest egg. I volunteered at a local clinic twice a week, joined a book club, and tried to fill my days with meaning. But I couldn't ignore the ache of loneliness that came from my strained relationship with my only child. Amanda's social media was a constant showcase of their luxurious lifestyle. There she was on a yacht in the Mediterranean. There were the children in designer clothes that they would outgrow in weeks. There was Tyler receiving a new sports car for his birthday. Each post felt like a reminder of the growing distance between us, not just financially, but emotionally. When Amanda did call, it was rarely just to talk. There was always an angle, always something she wanted. She needed me to watch the children because their nanny had quit. She wanted my opinion on vacation destinations, but wasn't actually interested in my input. She wanted to know if I'd changed my will lately. That last question should have been a warning sign, but I was so desperate for her attention that I ignored it. My friend Susan, a retired teacher I'd met in my book club, saw right through it all. "Jean, that girl sees you as her personal ATM," she said one day over coffee. "When was the last time she did anything for you?" I couldn't remember, and that realization broke my heart. The first real financial crisis hit when Amanda was 36. She called me in tears one Sunday evening, her voice shaking with panic. "Mom, we're in trouble. Big trouble." It turned out that Tyler's firm was under investigation for some irregularities in their accounting practices. His assets were temporarily frozen, and they were struggling to maintain their lifestyle. Amanda was terrified they might have to sell their house, or worse, in her mind, let go of their country club membership. "We just need a loan to get us through this rough patch," she said. "30,000 should cover us until Tyler's situation gets sorted out. We'll pay you back as soon as everything's cleared up, I promise." I hesitated. This was a significant amount more than I had ever given her before. It would mean dipping into the principal of my retirement savings, not just the interest I lived on. "Amanda, that's a lot of money. Are you sure there's no other way? Could you cut back on expenses for a while?" Her response was immediate and cold. If you don't want to help your own daughter in her time of need, just say so. I thought family was supposed to support each other. The guilt was overwhelming. Of course, I wanted to help my daughter, and they had children to think about. What kind of grandmother would let her grandchildren suffer? I transferred the money the next day. Amanda's gratitude was effusive but brief. She promised they would pay me back with interest as soon as Tyler's misunderstanding with the authorities was resolved. I tried to believe her, even as a voice in the back of my mind warned me I would never see that money again. 3 weeks later, Amanda posted pictures of her mental health day at an exclusive spa. The following month, she shared photos of Lily's elaborate 6th birthday party, complete with a unicorn-themed bouncy castle and a professional photographer. There was no mention of financial troubles, no indication that they were cutting back while Tyler's business issues were resolved. When I gently asked about repayment during one of our rare phone calls, Amanda acted as if she couldn't hear me and quickly changed the subject. After 3 attempts, I gave up, swallowing my resentment along with my pride. Meanwhile, I was feeling the impact of the withdrawal from my savings. I had planned my retirement budget carefully, and this unexpected loss meant I needed to make adjustments. I started shopping at discount grocery stores, cut my cable subscription, and limited my heating during the winter months. A year after the loan, I saw on social media that Tyler's company had not only recovered, but was expanding. There was a photo of him receiving an industry award, Amanda by his side in what looked like a very expensive new dress. Still, there was no mention of repaying what they had borrowed. When my water heater broke down that winter, I realized I needed to replenish my emergency fund. At 67, I never expected to return to work, but I found myself applying for a part-time position at the hospital where I had spent my career. 3 days a week, I was back in scrubs, my body aching from the long hours on my feet, my mind foggy from the early morning shifts. I didn't tell Amanda about my return to work. Somehow, I felt it would give her satisfaction to know I needed the money, that her actions had concrete consequences for my well-being. Or perhaps I was afraid she would see it as an opportunity to ask for more. Susan was furious when she found out. "You're letting them walk all over you, Jean. They take, and you keep giving until there's nothing left. What happens when you're too old to work? Who will take care of you then?" I had no answer. The truth was, I had always assumed Amanda would care for me in my final years as I had cared for my own mother. But now I wasn't so sure. The resentment grew inside me like a cancer, eating away at the love I had for my daughter. Each social media post, each ignored phone call, each deflected question about the money she owed me added another layer of hurt. I began to dread our interactions rather than look forward to them. Then came Amanda's 38th birthday, and with it, the beginning of the end. Amanda insisted I join her birthday celebration at a new restaurant downtown where the chef had been featured in gourmet magazines. "It's just going to be family," she assured me, though her definition of family seemed to include a dozen of her and Tyler's closest friends. I spent hours trying to find an appropriate outfit, knowing that Amanda would be embarrassed if I didn't look the part. I settled on a navy blue dress I'd worn to a colleague's retirement party, paired with my only good jewelry, a pearl necklace David had given me on our 10th anniversary. The restaurant was intimidating with its dim lighting and waiters who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. I felt out of place the moment I walked in, clutching my modest gift, a hand-knit scarf I had spent weeks making. Amanda air-kissed me when I arrived, careful not to smudge her immaculate makeup. "Mom, you made it," she said, as if she was surprised I had actually shown up. "Everyone, this is my mother, Jean." The introductions to her friends were a blur of unfamiliar names and polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. I was seated at the far end of the table next to a woman who spent the entire night on her phone and a man who asked me if I had considered cosmetic procedures for women of a certain age. It was during the first course that I noticed Amanda's watch. The light caught it as she gestured dramatically while telling a story. It was sleek and obviously expensive, with tiny diamonds surrounding the face. Later, I overheard her friend Kelly complimenting it. "Is that the new Cartier?" Kelly asked, eyebrows raised in appreciation. Amanda nodded, extending her wrist for a better view. "Tyler surprised me this morning. It's the limited edition just released last month. Retails for $10,000. $10,000 for a watch. The amount echoed in my head as I thought of my part-time job of the water heater I'd replaced with the cheapest model available of the $30,000 I would never see again. I felt sick to my stomach, but forced myself to continue eating the tiny portion of food that had cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The conversation around the table revolved around topics that highlighted the gap between my world and theirs. The challenges of finding good household staff, the disappointment of having to settle for a less desirable cabin on a recent cruise, the stress of managing multiple properties. "Jean, you really should think about upgrading your living situation," said a woman whose name I'd already forgotten. "At your age, you want comfort and security." Before I could respond, Amanda jumped in. "Mom's very attached to her little house, aren't you, Mom? She's been there forever, so many memories." There was a patronizing note in her voice that made me feel like a child being patted on the head. My house wasn't grand, but it was mine paid for with decades of hard work. The way Amanda dismissed it made me realize she saw my life, my choices, as somehow less than worthy. When the time came for gifts, I watched as Amanda unwrapped expensive presents from her friends, designer handbags, spa vouchers, bottles of champagne that cost hundreds of dollars. When she opened my hand-knit scarf, there was a moment of awkward silence. "Oh, how homemade," Amanda said, quickly setting it aside to reach for the next gift. I saw one of her friends suppress a smirk. During dessert, the conversation turned to financial security. Tyler, already on his fourth whiskey of the night, was holding forth about investment strategies. "Liquid assets are the key," he declared, swirling his drink. "You need to be able to move money quickly in today's market." "Speaking of liquid assets," Amanda said, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Mom, you must have quite a nice nest egg saved up after all those years of nursing. What are you doing with it? It seems a shame to just have it sitting there." All eyes turned to me and I felt a flush creep up my neck. "I have what I need," I said carefully. "My savings are for my later years." Amanda laughed as if I'd said something amusing. "Later years, Mom, you're in your later years now. What are you saving for a luxury retirement home?" Her friends chuckled and I felt the burn of humiliation. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of discomfort. When it was finally time to leave, Amanda insisted on driving me home. The car ride was tense, with her questioning me more directly about my finances. "Seriously, Mom, how much do you actually have saved, ballpark figure?" "That's personal, Amanda," I said, staring out the window. "Personal, I'm your daughter. There shouldn't be secrets between us, especially about something that affects the family." "How does my retirement affect you?" She sighed dramatically, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "Because we're family. What's yours is ours, what's ours is yours. That's how it works." Except it didn't work that way, did it? What was theirs remained firmly theirs. What was mine was apparently up for negotiation. "We should talk about your will, too," she continued. "Tyler knows an excellent estate lawyer who could help you update it. Make sure everything's in order." By the time she dropped me off, I felt drained and uneasy. Something had changed in our dynamic, and I sensed a storm brewing on the horizon. I just didn't know how bad it would be. 3 days after the birthday dinner, Amanda showed up at my house unannounced. It was unusual for her to visit me without a specific reason, and my stomach immediately knotted with anxiety. She was dressed impeccably as always in a cream-colored blazer and tailored pants that probably cost more than my monthly pension. The Cartier watch gleamed on her wrist, a $10,000 reminder of her priorities. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, brushing past me into the living room. She glanced around with a slight grimace, as if the modest furnishings offended her aesthetic sensibilities. "Don't you ever think about redecorating? This place looks exactly the same as when Dad was alive." I bit back a sharp response. The house held memories of David that I treasured, but Amanda had never understood that. To her, everything was disposable, replaceable, upgradable. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, sitting in my favorite armchair while she perched on the edge of the sofa looking uncomfortable. Amanda took a deep breath, as if preparing to deliver a rehearsed speech. "I've been thinking about our family's financial situation, and there's something that's been bothering me." My heart raced. Was she finally going to address the $30,000 she still owed me? "The thing is, Mom, there's a significant imbalance in our family's resources. Tyler and I have been talking, and we feel it's time to even things out." I frowned, not understanding. "Even things out? What do you mean?" You're living alone in this paid-off house with 40-plus years of savings just sitting in accounts. Meanwhile, Tyler and I are working so hard to give Lily and Ethan the opportunities they deserve. We have the mortgage, the children's private school tuition, the country club fees. She paused, running a manicured finger along the edge of the coffee table. We think it's time for you to contribute to the family in a meaningful way, to share your resources with the next generation. The room seemed to tilt around me as her meaning became clear. Are you asking me to give you my savings? Not all at once, she clarified, as if that made it more reasonable. But yes, we think it's time to transfer your assets to us. We can manage them more effectively, and it would ensure they're used for the family's benefit. I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. The daughter I had raised, the child I had sacrificed everything for, was demanding I hand over my life savings. Amanda, that money is my security. It's what I've worked for my entire life. It's to take care of me in my old age, for medical expenses, for whatever I might need. She waved a dismissive hand, the diamonds on her watch catching the light. That's what family is for, Mom. We'll take care of you when the time comes. But right now, that money is just sitting there when it could be helping your grandchildren securing their future. By paying for country club memberships? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Amanda's expression hardened. Don't judge our lifestyle choices. We provide Lily and Ethan with advantages you could never give me. Is that what this is about? Some kind of jealousy? This isn't about jealousy. This is about you wearing a $10,000 watch while asking me to hand over my retirement funds. Oh, for goodness sake, she rolled her eyes. It was a gift from Tyler. And anyway, it's an investment piece. The point is, you're being selfish. What do you need all that money for at your age? The accusation stung like a physical blow. Selfish. After everything I had sacrificed. The truth is, Amanda continued, Tyler and I have some financial challenges right now. Nothing serious, just cash flow issues. His business is expanding, and we've had to leverage quite a bit. If you could see the bigger picture, you'd understand this is for the good of the whole family. Translation, they were in debt. Probably serious debt, despite all their showing off. The lavish lifestyle was a house of cards, and they wanted my savings to prop it up. No, I said, the word coming out stronger than I expected. The answer is no, Amanda. I will not hand over my savings to you. Her face flushed with anger. I can't believe you're being so stubborn about this, after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. She stood up abruptly. Fine, be that way. But don't expect to see much of Lily and Ethan if this is your attitude. Family supports family, Mom. I guess you've forgotten that. The threat regarding my grandchildren was the cruelest cut of all. I watched in stunned silence as she stormed toward the front door. And think about it, she said, pausing with her hand on the doorknob. This isn't just about money. It's about what kind of relationship you want with your family going forward. I'll call you tomorrow. I hope you'll have come to your senses by then. The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone in the suddenly too quiet house. I sat motionless in my chair, tears streaming down my face as the full weight of what had just happened settled over me. My own daughter had tried to emotionally blackmail me into giving her my life savings. And when that didn't work, she had threatened to keep my grandchildren from me. It was a betrayal so profound that it cracked something fundamental inside me. All the years of giving, sacrificing, supporting, and this was how she saw me, a resource to be drained until there was nothing left. I cried until there were no tears left, until my eyes burned and my throat was raw. Then I sat in the gathering darkness, feeling more alone than I had since the day I buried David. But beneath the pain, something else was stirring, a resolve, a certainty that something had to change. I couldn't continue this way. For the first time in decades, I allowed myself to consider a radical thought. What if I put myself first? What if I walked away? The idea was terrifying, and yet as the night deepened around me, it also felt like the first breath of freedom I had taken in years. I didn't sleep that night. As the first light of dawn filtered through my bedroom window, I made a decision that would change everything. For once in my life, I was going to choose myself. My hands shook as I dialed Susan's number. It was early, barely 6 in the morning, but she answered on the third ring. Jean, is everything okay? The concern in her voice nearly broke my resolve. No, I said honestly. Amanda came to see me yesterday. She demanded I give her my savings, all of it. Susan's sharp intake of breath was followed by a string of colorful words I had never heard her use before. Please tell me you said no. I did, and she threatened to keep the children from me if I don't change my mind. That manipulative little... Susan caught herself. What are you going to do? The question hung between us. What was I going to do? Stay and fight? Continue this toxic cycle? Let Amanda drain me emotionally and financially until there was nothing left? I'm leaving. I said the words surreal as they left my mouth. I'm going to take my money and go somewhere she can't find me, at least for a while. I need space to think to heal. There was a long pause. Where will you go? I thought about all the places I'd dreamed of visiting but never had. One stood out, a wish I'd carried since nursing school. Spain, Barcelona, I've always wanted to see it. Spain. Susan sounded surprised but not disapproving. That's bold. I need bold right now. I need a complete break. We talked for another hour. Susan, ever practical, helped me formulate a plan. She would water my plants, collect my mail, keep an eye on my house. I would call her when I was settled, let her know I was safe. Are you sure about this, Jean? It's a drastic step. I wasn't sure. I was terrified. But I also felt more alive than I had in years. I'm sure I can't stay here and be Amanda's personal bank anymore. I'm sure I deserve better than to be manipulated and threatened by my own daughter. After hanging up, I moved with purpose. First, stop the bank. I withdrew a significant portion of my savings, enough to live on comfortably for a year or more. The bank manager raised his eyebrows at the unusual request, but processed it without question. I felt a twinge of guilt imagining Amanda's reaction when she discovered the accounts were significantly reduced, but I pushed it aside. This was my money, earned through decades of hard work. Next, I went online and booked a one-way ticket to Barcelona, departing the next morning. The cost made me wince, but I reminded myself this was necessary for my mental and emotional health. I looked up short-term rentals and found a small apartment in the Gothic Quarter available immediately. I put down a deposit, hands trembling with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Back at home, I packed methodically. Practical clothes, comfortable shoes, my medications, a few cherished photos, including one of David and a family portrait from when Amanda was young and still looked at me with love. I limited myself to 2 suitcases, knowing that anything else could be purchased if needed. The hardest part was writing the note for Amanda. I sat at my kitchen table, pen in hand, trying to find words that would explain without apologizing, that would set boundaries without severing the relationship completely. Amanda, I wrote, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Your request yesterday forced me to recognize that our relationship has become unhealthy. You see me as a resource to be used rather than a person to be loved. I've decided to take some time away to think about what I want for the rest of my life. I've taken my money with me. It is mine to use as I see fit, earned through years of hard work. I still love you and the children, but I need to love myself too. I'll be in touch when I'm ready, Mom. I read it over several times, wondering if it was too harsh or not firm enough. In the end, I left it as it was, honest and direct. I placed it on the coffee table where she would see it when she inevitably came by to press me further about her demands. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with doubts and second thoughts. Was I being too dramatic? Should I try to work things out with Amanda? Was I abandoning my grandchildren? But every time I wavered, I remembered the cold look in her eyes as she demanded my savings, the casual cruelty of her threat to keep Lily and Ethan from me if I didn't comply, and I knew I was making the right choice, maybe the first right choice for myself in decades. The taxi arrived at 5:30 the next morning. I took one last look at the house that held so many memories, both joyful and painful. For a moment, I almost called the whole thing off. Then I thought of the freedom waiting for me, the chance to discover who Jean could be when she wasn't just Amanda's mother, or the reliable nurse, or the compliant ATM. I locked the door, handed the key to the neighbor who would pass it to Susan, and stepped into the taxi. "Airport, please," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. As we pulled away from the curb, a strange mixture of grief and liberation washed over me. I was 67 years old and starting over. It was terrifying, it was thrilling, it was necessary. At the airport, I checked in for my flight, half expecting Amanda to somehow appear and stop me. But the process went smoothly, and soon I was boarding the plane, settling into my seat, watching America recede beneath me as we took off. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I finally allowed myself to cry quiet tears that were equal parts mourning and release. I was leaving behind the only life I had ever known, but I was also escaping a situation that was slowly destroying me. A kind flight attendant noticed my tears and brought me an extra blanket and a cup of tea. "First time flying overseas?" she asked gently. "First time doing a lot of things?" I replied, managing a small smile. She patted my hand. "You'll be just fine. Sometimes the best adventures start with a little fear." As the plane continued eastward, carrying me toward a new chapter of my life, I chose to believe she was right. 8 hours later, I stepped into the warm Mediterranean sunshine of Barcelona. The city was a riot of color and sound so different from my quiet suburban existence back home. The taxi driver who took me to my rental apartment spoke rapid Spanish, mixed with a few English words, gesturing enthusiastically at landmarks as we passed. I caught perhaps one word in 10, but smiled and nodded, already feeling the first tendrils of excitement breaking through my anxiety. The apartment was on the third floor of an old building with no elevator. By the time I reached my door, I was breathing heavily, my suitcases suddenly seeming unnecessarily heavy. But when I stepped inside, the view from the tiny balcony made the climb worthwhile. Terracotta rooftops stretched toward the sea, punctuated by the spires of ancient churches. It was like stepping into a painting. That first night was difficult. The reality of what I had done hit me as I lay on an unfamiliar bed in a strange city where I didn't speak the language. My phone showed a dozen missed calls from Amanda, followed by increasingly angry text messages. "Where are you? You call me immediately." "Mom, this isn't funny. I'm coming over." "I can't believe you took your money and ran off like a thief in the night. How could you do this to your family?" "The kids are asking for you. What am I supposed to tell them?" That last one cut deep. I turned off my phone, unable to bear more. Was I being selfish? Had I overreacted? But then I remembered the cold calculation in Amanda's eyes as she demanded my savings, the casual way she had threatened to keep my grandchildren from me. No, I hadn't overreacted. I had finally stood up for myself. The next few days were a blur of small victories and moments of doubt. I found a nearby market where I could buy fresh food. I discovered a cafe with Wi-Fi where the owner spoke a little English and was patient with my attempts at Spanish. I began to explore my neighborhood, taking photos of beautiful buildings and texting them to Susan as proof that I was all right. A week into my self-imposed exile, I joined a conversational Spanish class for foreigners. The other students were a mix of ages and nationalities, all fumbling through phrases together, laughing at our mistakes. For the first time in years, I was making friends based on common interests rather than proximity or convenience. Maria, a retired professor from Argentina, took me under her wing. "Your daughter sounds like she needs a lesson in respect," she said when I eventually shared a simplified version of why I'd come to Barcelona. "You did the right thing creating some distance." John and Eleanor, a British couple in their 70s, who had retired to Spain 5 years earlier, invited me to dinner at their apartment. "Best decision we ever made leaving rainy London behind," Eleanor confided. "Sometimes you have to shake things up to appreciate what you have or to realize what you've been missing." 3 weeks into my new life, I finally felt ready to answer Amanda's calls. She had been phoning daily, leaving voicemails that ranged from concerned to furious to tearful. I sat on my little balcony watching the sunset over the city and dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "Mom, where are you? Are you okay?" The genuine worry in her voice almost made me waver. "I'm fine, Amanda. I'm in Barcelona." "Barcelona, Spain? Are you serious? Why would you go there?" "Because I've always wanted to see it," I said simply. "And because I needed space to think." There was a long pause. "You can't just run away because you're mad at me. That's not how adults handle conflict." The irony of my 38-year-old daughter lecturing me on adult behavior was not lost on me. "I didn't run away, Amanda. I removed myself from a toxic situation. There's a difference." "Toxic, Mom? I was trying to help our family, to make sure our resources are being used efficiently." They weren't our resources, they were mine. Earned through 40 years of nursing, saved carefully for my retirement. And you were trying to take them from me. Take them I was asking you to share with your family, with your grandchildren. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Amanda, you were wearing a $10,000 watch while demanding I hand over my life savings. Can you understand how that looked to me? Oh, not the watch again. She sighed dramatically. It was a gift from Tyler. That's not the point. The point is that you and Tyler live a lifestyle you can't afford, and you expected me to fund it at the expense of my own security. When I said no, you threatened to keep my grandchildren from me. That was cruel, and it showed me exactly how you see our relationship. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Amanda spoke, her voice smaller than before. So, what happens now? You just stay in Spain forever? I don't know, I admitted. For now, I'm staying. I'm learning Spanish. I'm making friends. I'm discovering who I am outside of being your mother or a nurse. And it feels good, Amanda. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm living for myself, not just existing for others. Another pause. The kids miss you. It was a low blow, using Lily and Ethan to manipulate me. In the past, it would have worked instantly, but I was changing. I miss them too. We can arrange video calls if you're willing, but I won't come back to the same situation I left. What does that mean? It means I won't be your ATM anymore. It means I expect respect as a person, not just as a resource. It means I need to see real change in how you treat me before I consider returning. The conversation ended shortly after, with Amanda still confused and angry, but perhaps beginning to understand that something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't the compliant mother she had always known. I was becoming someone new, someone with boundaries and self-respect. 2 months into my Barcelona adventure, I received an email from Amanda. The tone was different from our previous communications, less entitled, more reflective. Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how I treated you. I didn't see it that way at the time, but maybe you're right. Tyler and I have been meeting with a financial advisor to get our spending under control. It's been a wake-up call. I'm not saying I understand your decision to leave, but I'm trying to. The kids really do miss you. We all do. Would it be okay if we came to visit? Just to talk face to face. My heart raced as I read her words. Was this genuine growth or another manipulation tactic? I decided to take the risk. You're welcome to visit, I wrote back. I think we have a lot to talk about. 3 weeks later, I sat nervously at a cafe near my apartment, watching for their arrival. When I spotted Amanda walking toward me, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes and flashy accessories. She was dressed simply in jeans and a plain blouse, her face with minimal makeup. And she was alone. The kids are with Tyler at the hotel, she explained as she sat down. I thought we should talk first, just the two of us. I nodded, noticing the absence of the Cartier watch. In its place was a simple leather band that looked more practical than prestigious. We ordered coffee, in awkward silence hanging between us, until Amanda finally spoke. I sold the watch, she said, apparently noticing where my gaze had been. And a lot of other things. We're downsizing. Tyler's business had more debt than he'd admitted even to me. When you left, it forced us to look at our finances honestly for the first time in years. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me was glad they were facing reality, but another part hurt knowing they had been in trouble and hadn't been honest with me. I came here to apologize. Amanda continued, her voice catching. You were right. I saw you as a resource, not as a person with your own needs and dreams. I was so caught up in maintaining our lifestyle that I lost sight of what really matters. When you disappeared, it shocked me into seeing what I'd become. Tears filled her eyes, and I felt my own welling up in response. I was terrible to you, Mom. Threatening to keep the kids from you was unforgivable. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm truly sorry, and I'm working on changing. The apology felt sincere, and I reached across the table to take her hand. I'm not blameless either, Amanda. I enabled your behavior for years because I was afraid of losing you. I should have set boundaries long ago. We talked for hours, really talked in a way we hadn't since she was a teenager. She told me about their financial reality check, how they were selling their oversized house and moving to a more modest neighborhood, how Tyler was facing his own issues with status and spending, how they were trying to teach Lily and Ethan values that went beyond material possessions. I don't know if we can fix everything, she admitted, but we're trying. The next day, I met with Tyler and the children at a park near their hotel. Lily and Ethan ran to me with unrestrained joy, covering me with kisses and asking a million questions about Spain. Tyler hung back looking uncomfortable until I approached him. "Thank you for coming," I said. He nodded awkwardly. Amanda needed this. We all did. There was a humility in his demeanor I had never seen before. The crisis had changed him too, it seemed. We spent a week together exploring Barcelona as a family. I showed them my favorite spots and we discovered new ones together. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of tension, old patterns threatening to reemerge. But there was also laughter and connection and the beginnings of a new understanding. On their last night, Amanda asked the question I had been expecting. "Will you come home with us, Mom?" I took a deep breath. "Not yet. I'm not ready to leave Barcelona. I've found something here that I need right now, a sense of independence I never had before. But I will visit. And when I'm ready, we'll talk about what comes next." She looked disappointed but nodded. "I understand. Just know we want you in our lives. The real you, not your money or what you can do for us. Just you." As I watched their taxi pull away from my apartment building heading to the airport, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness at the separation, joy at the reconnection, hope for the future, but also a fierce pride in myself for having taken this stand, for having chosen my own well-being, even when it was terrifying. I stayed in Barcelona for another 6 months, building a life that felt authentically mine. I volunteered at an English language library, improved my Spanish, made friends from around the world. I video called with Lily and Ethan weekly, and my relationship with Amanda slowly healed text by text, call by call. When I did return to the States, it was on my own terms. I kept my house, but split my time between there and a small rental in Barcelona that had become my second home. Amanda and Tyler continued their financial restructuring, selling off luxuries, paying down debt, building a more sustainable lifestyle. The journey wasn't easy for any of us. There were setbacks and arguments and moments when old wounds reopened. But the fundamental dynamic had changed. I was no longer the ATM or the convenient babysitter or the easily manipulated mother. I was Jean, a woman with her own life and boundaries who deserved respect. Looking back now, sitting on my Barcelona balcony as the sun sets over the terracotta roofs, I realized that Amanda's attempt to take my savings was actually a gift in disguise. It forced me to see the truth of our relationship and gave me the push I needed to reclaim my life. Sometimes the most painful moments lead to the most necessary growth. If you are watching this and finding yourself in a similar situation, whether with a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend, remember that it's never too late to set boundaries. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to start over. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have left like I did, or tried to resolve things differently? Let me know in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of life's unexpected journeys. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away, even from the people we love most, until they learn to truly see us. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your life belongs to you first.